In this video, I will continue to level our base Barbarian character through the primal path of the Totem Warrior. As you can see, I've already got a character sheet open, and I've already updated the name of the character in order to indicate the path that we're taking, kind of like what I've been doing in the past. I've also got our class sheet and our specialization sheet open, and I've opened up the first skill that we'll have to learn here in a few minutes. So with that in mind, let's actually get started. The first thing I'm going to do is drag this icon over on top of the Barbarian 2 wording. That'll prompt us for our primal path selection. At the same time, it will level up our character. The first thing we'll want to do is take a look at our Barbarian class sheet here, and specifically what we're looking for is this particular table. What we want to do is take a look at our proficiency bonuses, rages, and rage damage bonuses to ensure that we're actually tracking essentially those changes inside of our character sheet. So at level 3, we do not see an increase in our proficiency bonus. We do, however, see an increase in the number of rages that we're going to take advantage of here, but we do not see an increase in the damage. So the first thing I'm going to do is modify our rage count. So we're going from a 2 to a 3, and that is under preparation. And all we're going to do is essentially increase the number of uses to 3. The next thing we're going to want to do is actually take a look at the abilities that we have gained. In this case, we're going to gain 2 when we initially create this character. The first is going to be Spirit Seeker, and the second is going to be Totem Spirit. So I'm going to open up both of those, and we'll take a look at Spirit Seeker first. With Spirit Seeker, you're gaining the ability to cast a couple of spells as rituals. You cannot use these during combat, unless you can find a quiet spot to sit down for 10 minutes, which is going to be rare in a combat mode. But generally, you're going to only be able to cast these when things are quiet, relatively calm, and you have the ability and time to focus. So I'm going to go to the Actions tab. Now you'll see here that we're also not gaining any spellcasting slots. There are none. You're not gaining the ability to make use of those in combat, so you're not going to get a spellcasting slot here that's active. What you do have the ability to do is make use of Beast Sense and Speak with Animal spells. So why don't we load those into our character sheet? First thing first, I'm going to click on the spell sheet here, and I'm going to look for Beast Sense. Then I'm just going to drag that onto our character sheet. And where did that go? Right, I forgot. Spells go into where you link them. I'm going to delete that there and drag it to a blank spot. Alright, so Beast Sense, which is nice, it's a level 2 spell, which kind of aligns with the fact that you're now a level 3 character here. It's going to last for the duration of 1 hour. So even casting it through a ritual gives you the ability to make use of this for a decent amount of time. And the advantage of it being a ritual, you can cast it pretty much as many times as you want throughout the day. You have to take those 10 minutes to do it, though. And that takes care of adding those 2 particular spells from Spirit Seeker into your character sheet. Now, when it comes to actually using them, your character will need to take a short break, if you will. It's not like a rest or a short or a long rest. It's a simple break where the party and you stop. You go through the process of casting that particular spell, and then you continue on. That's literally all it is. The trick is going to be that with this one, it only lasts for 10 minutes. And it is a ritual spell. So it aligns with what you're doing here. But having this last only 10 minutes means you kind of need to know what it is you're going to be doing with it right away. So the situation you might use this is if you need to ask a particular creature about some information of a particular, say, a party that you're chasing, and you come across a deer and they're not overly skittish, but they're not running away either, then you can take the 10 minutes, cast your ritual spell, speak with that animal as long as they're still there, get the information you're looking for if they're able to communicate that information, and then continue on. And eventually that spell fades. When it comes to Beast Sense, that can last for a little longer. That can last up to an hour, as long as you concentrate. So for that entire duration, you have to concentrate. You also have to touch what it is you're casting that particular sense on. So you could potentially cast it on a party member and make use of that particular spell as they go along. So let's say you have a ranger in your particular group, but they don't have the ability to cast Beast Sense. You can give that ranger that capability, or you can give it to yourself, or you can give it to another party member. So that takes care of Spirit Seeker. So let's take a look at Totem Spirit. With Totem Spirit, you're kind of adopting a chosen path, and I'll expand this out so that you can see what paths you have available to you. You're essentially taking one of these particular animals, or a variation of, as your spirit token, or your spirit protector, if you will. A bear, an eagle, or a wolf. And each of those particular animals has different traits that you will gain as part of that process. For example, if you've chosen the bear totem, then you will essentially be immune to all damage except for psychic damage. You'll notice that it says all damage. That includes magical damage. Psychic damage is the only damage that can get through your defenses. If you've chosen the path of the eagle, then while you're raging, and I should state that that's while you're raging as well for the bear, but while you're raging and you're not wearing any armor, every creature that makes an attack of opportunity against you does so with disadvantage. You can also use the dash action as a bonus action, which gives you the ability to essentially speed through a particular combat scenario relatively quickly. If you decide to take the wolf totem and you're raging, then all of your friends or all of your party members will gain advantage on melee attacks against any hostile creature within 5 feet of you. Not within 5 feet of them, but within 5 feet of you. So the capability of this totem spirit does potentially transfer to other party members. And it really will come down to what path you choose. When you've chosen that particular path, that's it. You can't change that path. So one of the things you will want to know in advance is what path you're going to choose to take. Additionally, because of the requirement for you to actually have an amulet or some other form of adornment that incorporates that particular totem's base elements, whether it's feathers in the case of the eagle path, maybe a claw or a tooth in the case of the bear or the wolf, or even a tuft of fur. Essentially what that means is that you will have to have those items before you can actually use that particular feature, or any other feature that relies on your totem spirit. But because of the way that this thing works, there are a couple of things you'll want to do. One, you're going to want to link this into your character sheet. So, where did you go? And that's up here. So, groups, and this is Path of the Totem Warrior. Okay, and you'll see here that it hasn't really linked any capability or effect, if you will, into this particular feature. So how do you actually go through and set that stuff up? Well, I'm going to show you with this particular feature here, each of the individual ones. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I don't know which path you're going to choose. So I'm going to show you how to set up each one. The first thing you're going to want to do is right click on the background here where it says Totem Spirit. So you want to make sure that you're on this particular line, and then you want to choose Action. Once that pops up, you'll want to choose the effect icon. And you'll want to do that 2 times. Sorry, 3 times total. I meant 2 more times. In relation to the bear, you're going to want to make sure that you open this up, and while raging, you have resistance to all damage except psychic damage. So, Totem Spirit, bear, semicolon, my apologies, resist, colon, all, comma, not psychic. So that's, I can't spell today, P-S-Y-C-H-I-C. P-S-Y-C-H-I-C, right? P-S-Y-C-H-I-C, yes. That is going to be on self, and that is essentially going to remain for the duration of your combat situation, or essentially while you're raging, now that I think about that. So, at max, it should be 1 round, in my opinion. If you've decided, however, to take the path of the wolf, then that's going to be a little bit different. And I'm going to do that one next. I'll skip eagle just for a moment. So this is going to be totem spirit. And wolf, semicolon. There are 2 ways here that you can go about doing this. The first is to grant each player who's attacking a creature within 5 feet of you the ability to have advantage on those attacks. The other is to simply tag those creatures that there is an advantage attack that can be made against them. I would argue that if you have a ranged member in your party, you should not make use of the latter option, because that would also give them the advantage to attack. In this case, it makes a lot more sense to actually grant advantage on players who are actively engaging that particular creature with a melee attack. That way you don't accidentally grant someone who has a range attack advantage on a particular creature. So with that, all you have to do is ADV ATK, and that's it. You would then link that effect to a particular player, and I would max that out at 1 round, again, so that it times out when your rage times out. That way someone's not always giving you advantage. But at the same time, you as a player are going to have to remember, oh, that creature's now dead. You need to remove that from that player that you granted it to. So that is one option. The second option would really only work if there was a means of testing for the incoming damage type against a particular creature, which currently, as far as I'm aware, there is not, based on all the research I've done so far. So for now, this is really the only way that you can do it, and do it in a way that limits it to melee attacks. So the next one is setting up the effect for the eagle, path of the eagle one. So I'm going to close out the wolf and open that up. So totem spirit. And this is eagle. Now, if you've chosen a similar creature like a hawk or some other form of bird of prey, I would highly recommend you ensure that you change that to that particular creature. That way it reflects the path that you're taking more definitively. And what you're going to do is grant dis attack on self on next roll. And the reason why I'm setting this up is someone is going to be making an attack of opportunity against you. When they do, you don't want that to be around past that particular attack roll. But if you have multiple characters or creatures that are attacking you, you should have that first roll apply with the effect enabled, let that roll do its thing, enable the effect again, and so on and so forth until all of the attacks against you are complete. At the same time, you'll want to make sure that you use dash as a bonus, or if you want to use dash as a bonus action here, you need to reflect that in essentially the role playing that you're going to do. So you're going to essentially drag and drop. Oops, you're going to click that. Sorry, drag and drop this, and say I'm using my dash action, and as the path of the eagle, and link that through so that the DM can actually read that to confirm that you do in fact have that capability. But this should actually go through and set things up so that combat is relatively simple and straightforward to do. So how do you actually go through and use this? Well, what you're going to want to do is open up the combat tracker here, and I'm just going to quickly set up, oops, wrong window, quickly set up the scenario here. Okay, remove that creature, link you into there. All right, so in relation to rage, you've already got rage up here. So you've got your effect here, and you'll want to click that the minute you decide to go rage. But at the same time, you're going to want to click, in the case of the bear, this one, if you've chosen the path of the bear. And the reason for that is you're raging. it should automatically apply while you're raging. These two are a little bit more selective based on the situation that you're going through. If you don't have any creature that is within 5 feet of you, there's no point dropping that effect on the player that is attacking that particular creature. In addition, if there are no advantage or attacks of opportunity against you, there's no point in granting disadvantage to those attacks. So really, the only one that comes into play at the time that you go into rage is the effect of the bear totem. Now, after X number of turns, we should see that that drops off, and it does. Excellent. And that completes everything that we have to do to finish the setup for level 3. So at level 4, we're going to gain our first ability score improvement. Now, anyone who's watched my previous videos will know what I'm about to do next. I might switch things up a little bit here, but we'll see. In relation to the proficiency bonus, rages, and rage damage, we don't have to make any additional adjustments. We don't need to add any other spells in relation to our totem path. And none of our proficient skills have changed in any way, shape, or form. We aren't gaining any new primal path or features for our base class here in any shape either. So the only thing we have to worry about is the ability score improvement. And what I'm going to do is show you what you can do in that particular case. There are 3 scenarios that come into play. The first, you can increase one ability by 2 points. So I could change the strength to an 18, for example, or this constitution to a 17, but not both at the same time. The second option is that I can modify both of those ability scores by 1 point each. So I could increase strength by 1 and constitution by 1, taking strength to 17 and constitution to 18. Those are both options you're guaranteed to be able to choose, but you can only choose one or the other. You cannot increase, for example, constitution by 2 and then strength by 1, because you've only got a total of 2 points to apply. The third option is only going to be available to you if the Dungeon Master has chosen to allow feats in their campaign. Some DMs feel that feats are a little bit overpowered. I'm on the fence either way. Some do grant a bit too much of an advantage, but at the same time, there are scenarios where that advantage becomes a hindrance. So it's totally up to the Dungeon Master. If the Dungeon Master does allow you to take a feat, they're going to be under this feats option here over on the far right. And as you can see, there are a large number of options that you have available to you. Although some only make sense for the particular class that you're choosing or the path that you've taken. Additionally, some actually have dependencies on ability scores or spellcasting capabilities or anything along those particular lines. For this one, I'm going to choose my strength and bring it up to 18. And that's going to increase my overall strength bonus here. At the same time, my strength saving throw and any skill that is proficient or reliant on strength, for example this one here, will have increased by 1 point as well. So with that, we have now completed level 4. Level 5, we're going to gain an extra attack ability as well as fast movement. We are also seeing an increase in our proficiency bonus, and that is pretty much everything that we're seeing here. So we can see that our proficient saving throws have gone up, as well as any ability here that is proficient should also have seen an increase. So nature, athletics, animal handling, and survival should all see an increase in the actual points that you can have there. So with the extra attack and fast movement, let's pop those open. Set that here, and fast movement. Set this here. So I'm going to deal with fast movement first, and the reason why is that can be a bit tricky to deal with. Fast movement allows you the ability to move an additional 10 feet of space during a movement round while you're not wearing heavy armor. That means you can wear light and medium armor, you can carry a shield, and still gain that bonus. You cannot gain that bonus if you're wearing any form of heavy armor. But this isn't something you can drop into your Actions tab here. It is only something you can make an adjustment to on your main page. So on your main page, next to your armor class, which is the 14 here in this little shield, you'll see a little sort of faded out magnifying glass. You're going to want to click that and open that up. This gives you the ability to make adjustments to your initiative rolls, the speed, i.e. the movement that you can do, and the total armor class that your character has. And in this case, all you're going to want to do is modify this misc field and add a 10 to it. And the reason for that is that you always want to have a good idea as to what your base or base movement is actually going to be. By making this adjustment here, you can very quickly, if you unintentionally or somehow get cursed with heavy armor, having to wear heavy armor, whatever, for some reason you're now wearing heavy armor, you can just clear that out, and that bonus movement is now out of your ability to make use of. But while you're wearing lighter medium armor or no armor at all, you still have that ability. And as you can see here, this total speed adjustment is taken into account. That is fast movement. Extra attack gives you what you think it does. So with extra attack, when you make a melee or ranged attack, you have the ability to attack an extra time. In this particular case, what that means is that with our Morningstar, we could attack 2 times in a particular round. Now, some skills give you the ability to attack as a bonus action. But in a lot of cases, those bonus actions are going to have a restriction on them. In this particular case, there is no restriction on your particular character. So in theory, if you gain the ability to have a bonus attack during a particular attack round, you could potentially attack a total of 4 times. We'll have to wait and see what the other features give us for this particular skill. But right now, you as a Barbarian, under the Totem Warrior path, have the ability to now attack twice in a particular round, and you will still be able to take advantage of a reaction. Typically, though, when you make a reaction, generally it is a single attack. You don't necessarily get the ability to attack twice, but sometimes you can. However, under Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, an attack of opportunity is 1 melee attack. To show you that, you'll want to go to the library, make sure you have your player's handbook loaded, select that, and go to the reference manual. Expand out this particular chapter list, if you will, and look for reaction. The first page we're going to want to look at is the order of combat page, and right down at the bottom are reactions. And you'll want to read through the context of this particular paragraph, but essentially it states that under certain circumstances, you can make a single reaction specific to a reaction you have through a feature or an attack of opportunity, which is covered a little bit later here. Making an attack down at the bottom describes how the attack of opportunity actually works. And in this particular case, on this line here, you'll see to make the opportunity attack, you use your reaction to make 1 melee attack against a provoking creature. Essentially what that means is that if you have an extra attack capability, you cannot make 2 attacks with that capability. Okay? So in theory, let's say the creature in front of you, you've made your 2 attacks against it, you've now scared the crap out of it, it's decided to run, so it's moving out of your sphere of influence. That means you can make a single melee attack against that particular creature as they exit your reach. Now, for actually setting up extra attack, you don't have to do anything else. You're already ready to go. It's just that you as the player have to remember that you now have the ability to attack twice. So level 6 is going to give us an increase in our rage attacks, as well as the next path feature. And I believe that will be Aspect of the Beast, yes. So, let's drop Barbarian 6 into place. Go down to our Actions tab, look for our Rage modifier, set it to Preparation, and increase it to 4. And that takes care of our total number of rages we can use before we have to rest. Let's take a look at Aspect of the Beast. Once again, you're going to have the option of 3 particular abilities within this aspect or feature. Depending on the path you have chosen, if you've chosen the path of the bear, you will gain the might of that bear. Your carrying capacity is going to double, including maximum load and maximum lift. And you gain advantage on strength checks made to push, pull, lift, or break objects. In relation to Path of the Eagle, you are gaining an advantage to your eyesight in a sense, so you can now see up to 1 mile away with no difficulty, as if they were within 100 feet, and you can discern fairly fine details at that range. Additionally, you no longer have disadvantage when you're making a wisdom perception check in dim light areas. In relation to the wolf, you are now able to track other creatures even at a fast pace, so you can essentially be racing along trying to reach a particular location, destination, whatever, at a very fast pace and still be able to track that particular creature that you may be chasing. At the same time, you now move stealthily when traveling at a normal pace. So you don't really need to worry about being surprised so much because, well, unless someone's actively looking for you, they're not necessarily going to be able to see you. But that applies to you and you alone. It does not apply to the party in any way, shape, or form. But there are a couple of things here that we could potentially go through and set up in our actions list. So let's drag this into place. And I'm going to, where is it here? Path of the Warrior. Rather than misspell something, just cut and paste it. Save some typing. Going to minimize that. All right, once again, there are no effects that have been applied to this particular ability. But in theory, we have some capabilities that we could take advantage of here in relation to the bear. So I'm going to add that effect and modify that. So, aspect of the beast, bear, semicolon, and ADVCHK, colon, strength, TH. And that's on self. Should expire on next roll. So essentially what this is going to do is at the time that you're trying to push, pull, lift, or break a particular object, you will want to make sure that you add this effect to your character. Once you've done that and you make your next attack roll, check roll, it will go through and do so with advantage. So, how do I show that? That is done by applying the effect at the time of roll, and then going through and making a strength check. So let's see. Is there a skill here that we could do that? Athletics kind of would apply, but I'll just make a standard strength check. So let's say I'm lifting a particular grate that has fallen down, and I'm just trying to push it back up into its frame. All I would do is double click on this die here, and as you can see, it's rolled twice, and the effect has gone away. In this case, I probably would have succeeded. Okay, so that takes care of the bear capability here. Now, as the eagle, there really isn't much that we can do here, other than the fact that you would no longer take a disadvantage roll or make a disadvantage roll when you do your wisdom or perception check. So, I suppose we could potentially add an ability for that, but as a dungeon master, I feel that it's more along the lines of you have to remember that you're not going to be suffering disadvantage to that. In relation to the wolf aspect, again, there's nothing here that we need to do for an effect. You're essentially traveling at a pace. You're not going to be in a combat scenario in that particular situation. So there really isn't, well, not necessarily anyway, but there really isn't any need to indicate whether you're able to track somebody at a fast pace or not. All you have to do is link in the aspect to the chat page. So click that and then just drop this into place. That didn't work. There we go. And that will allow the Dungeon Master to read through the description of the path that you have chosen and make sure that what you're doing does make sense. Okay, so that completes level 6. In relation to level 7, we are going to be gaining a new feature and no other changes. So let's drop that into place and grab Feral Instinct. So with Feral Instinct, this is going to give you advantage on your initiative rolls at the same time as kind of removing the ability to be surprised during an initial combat round. So let's link this into the base skill here. So Barbarian. And we're going to want to add an effect. And what that effect is Feral Instinct, semicolon, ADV init. That's on self. And it doesn't expire, it's always there. When you're dropped into a combat track, into the combat tracker, you're going to want to make sure that you click this. And what that's going to do is whenever you make an initiative roll, it's going to roll with advantage. It's always going to drop the lowest value. That means you're practically guaranteed, but not necessarily guaranteed, to be up in the upper combat order, if you will. So you're going to be going fairly early in the order of combat. In a lot of cases, you'll be going first. In relation to this portion here, if you are surprised at the beginning of combat and aren't incapacitated, you can act normally on your first turn, but only if you enter rage on that turn. So here's the other thing. Feral Instinct, you don't have to be enraged for. But this, you do. So what's going to happen is if your party is walking down a particular, let's say, ravine, and it happens to be the perfect spot for an ambush, well, that ambush is going to trigger a surprise attack. If, however, you are not incapacitated and you choose to go into rage right at that moment, so the minute the DM essentially says you have been surprised, you go, I am enraging, you can now make a valid attack back at that particular ambushing party as if it was a normal combat round, not a surprise round. So when the Dungeon Master goes through and asks, can you please link that? All you have to do is drag and drop, just so that you can show them what that skill actually does. The Dungeon Master is not necessarily going to know every single skill right off unless they've seen that skill multiple times, or feature in this particular case. So that's something that you'll periodically have to do. And that completes level 7. So level 8, we're going to see our next ability score improvement. So I'm just going to drop that into place. And I'm going to choose to increase my constitution and my strength by 1 point each. So I'm going to bring that up to 19. I'm going to bring that up to 18. And I've done that intentionally because what this does is it allows me to showcase something that I've tried to showcase in each video because it's one of the most confusing things about what happens when your constitution bonus increases. In case you didn't catch that, we went from a +3 bonus to a +4 bonus. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means I am missing hit points. In fact, I am missing 8 hit points. And the reason I know that is because my character is level 8. The change in bonus that I gained was a 1, so 8 times 1 equals 8. That means that this needs to become a 93. And that actually completes level 8. In relation to level 9, we're going to see our first rage damage bonus increase, and we're going to see our first brutal critical die. Nothing else is going to change. So the first thing that I'm going to do is drop the level into place and then adjust our rage damage. So minimize that, expand this, and open that up. So if you remember the base Barbarian video, we added this damage to bonus. What we want to do is modify that to be a damage 3 bonus, based on the fact that we're now able to do 3 points of damage as part of our damage bonus. Any time you actually do damage now, you will get an additional 3 points of damage added to that particular total damage that you're receiving or that you're dishing out. So that makes our rage skill modified to what we need to do. In relation to the brutal critical die roll, that is actually something we adjust right at the top of the actions tab. So under our weapons header here, you'll see a magnifying glass. Just click on that and it'll pop open this particular sub-window. In relation to brutal critical die, it applies to melee attacks, I do believe, in the case of us. So extra, yeah, melee attack. Actions tab. All you have to do is modify this particular value here. As you can see, it's a 0 here. We want to make sure that we add that or change that to a 1. And that is it. So now anytime you roll a critical roll, it will do 1 additional die of damage. And that completes setting up level 9. In relation to level 10, we're going to gain our next path feature, which, if I'm not mistaken, is Spirit Walker. And we're not going to see any additional changes. So let's drop this into place and then take a look at Spirit Walker. Spirit Walker gives you the ability to cast another spell. In this case, it is Commune with Nature. So let's pop open spells. I'm going to minimize those. I don't know what level this is going to drop into, so. And it's Commune. C-O-M-M-U-N-E. Okay, so Commune with Nature. Level 5 spell. Excellent. Once again, this is a spell you as a player, or you as your character, can only cast as a ritual, which means you need to take 10 minutes to cast this particular spell. So let's say your party has gone through the process of looking for something, and you're not really making any headway, and you've decided to take a rest. That would be the perfect opportunity for you to make use of Spirit Walker, because it would allow you to take 10 minutes to cast that ritual, and what will happen is that an animal or a spiritual aspect of your totem animal, whether it's a bear, hawk, eagle, wolf, whatever, will appear to you and convey information specific to the question that you have asked it. You can then essentially cast that again if you're not getting the information that you're doing it or getting from it is overly useful or anything along those particular lines. So it gives you the ability to divine information that you otherwise might not be able to seek or find through other means. And that actually completes level 10. With level 11, we're going to gain Relentless Rage. Oh, and we did have a proficiency bonus increase. I didn't even notice that. We're going to gain Relentless Rage and no other changes. So, level 11. Drop that there. Open up Relentless Rage. And there we go. Relentless Rage essentially gives you the ability to stay in the fight longer. Let's say that you're at the tail end of a particular fight, and you have suffered significant damage to the point where you're now down to a handful of hit points left, and you get hit for 10 hit points of damage. Your character will be able to make use of Relentless Rage to roll a Constitution saving throw, and your first check for a particular day or between rests will be a DC check of 10. So if you succeed on that DC check of 10, you will be able to, instead of being reduced to 0 hit points, you will be reduced to 1 hit point, giving the ability to stay in the fight. Now, there are two scenarios to that. One is, if you're really only being attacked once per round, it'll potentially increase the number of rounds that you will be around for. However, if you are being attacked multiple times in a single round, you might burn through this particular check really quickly. Now, by default, when we link this particular skill into our actions page, it will give us a saving throw ability here. Okay, so Relentless Rage. This is a path of the Barbarian, so it's a Barbarian skill. I'm going to drop that into the Barbarian group here and just temporarily minimize rage. So how does this actually work? Well, if you notice here, if I just click this, all I'm going to get is a DC 10 check. That's not what we actually want to have happen. What you want to do is in the combat tracker, target yourself. And you do that by hitting the control key and left clicking on your token. You can now see that you have yourself targeted. Now when I click this, I will actually do a proper saving throw roll. But here's the thing. Now that I have made this roll, I've essentially burned this particular DC check, if you will. So in relation to the Constitution 10 check, we passed. But any other check that we do before our next long rest is going to require us to do a DC 15 or higher check. Well, if you watched my Path of the Berserker video, you will understand how to do this. But if you didn't, what you should do, and this is the recommended way that I'm recommending you do, is to set up multiple Relentless Rage features up to the ability of where you can actually make a save. So this is a DC 10 check. And it's a Constitution save. So this is going to be entirely dependent on your Constitution saving throw. Okay? Right now, you're able to essentially make a 28 roll. So that means we should probably set up everything up to a DC 25 check. Now, show you a little bit of a trick here. If you essentially click this and drop it back into your Actions tab here, left click on that and drag it into here, you'll see that I got another Relentless Rage that automatically dropped into the Barbarian grouping here. When you drag and drop something that is already grouped into a group, it will drop into that same group. So the DC 10 check we don't need to modify any further. We now have a DC 15 requirement. So let's set that description up as DC 15 and modify it so that it requires a 15 on the save or higher. I'm then going to drag and drop this again, minimize that, make a DC 20 check, and modify this so that it requires a 20. And then for the last one, make a 25 check and make that a 25. Okay, now all we have to do is set up the preparation stuff. So you want to take a look at your Relentless Rage and increase each of these to a single use. Now what will happen is when you actually go through and make use of this particular effect, if you will. So I already have myself targeted in the combat tracker. I'm now going to make my saving throw roll. I succeeded. I've burned the use of that particular check, if you will, or feature until the next long rest. I now have to do a DC 15 save. I succeeded. I've now burned through that particular long check until the next long rest. Now, even if you make the roll and you fail, let's say on this one here, am I going to fail? Yes. So in this time, I failed. I'm now unconscious. I still have to flag that as used. I don't have any additional checks that I can make use of for the rest of the day until I've rested through a long rest, not a short rest. Now, you might get knocked unconscious during this round, and if you've got a cleric in your party, they might heal you up at the end of that particular round. And then throughout the course of the day, you may acquire a short rest and make use of all of your hit die here in order to heal yourself back up to relatively close to 126 hit points that you have. In any event, if you go into combat and you have not completed a long rest, you won't have any additional Relentless Rage checks to make use of. So you will have to be very careful. You will be knocked out unconscious the minute you're taken below 0 hit points. Or taken 2 or below 0 hit points, I should clarify that. The only way you're going to actually gain those capabilities back is if you execute a long rest. And I can do that on the Dungeon Master screen. So I will go through and execute a short rest, and you will see that they're not returning. But if I make a long rest happen, you will see that your Relentless rage checks have returned. And now you can make use of them again. That's how that skill is supposed to work. And that completes setting up level 11. With level 12, we're going to gain our next ability score improvement, and we see an increase in our total rage usage. So let's go ahead and drop this level into place. Then I'm going to go to the Actions tab and modify my rage skill. And go to Preparation. Why did that zero out? That should be at 5. Interesting that that did that. Anyway, I'm not going to worry too much about it. So our rage skill now has 5 uses, and that should match that. I must have unintentionally deleted it at some point. That's fine. Now, in relation to our ability score improvement, I'm actually going to go through the process of choosing a feat so that you can see what feats might be useful here. There are definitely more feats that you can potentially choose from. These are the ones that I'm thinking of potentially selecting for this particular character. And here's why. With alertness, you're going to gain an additional bonus to your initiative roll. You can't be surprised while you're conscious, and that does not mean that you can't be surprised while you're sleeping. You have to be awake, so you can no longer be surprised. That kind of complements your Feral Instinct ability right off, but you just don't necessarily need to take this skill because it's partially redundant. And you also don't gain other creatures don't gain advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being unseen by you. So even if something is hidden and you don't see them, they will no longer require an advantage roll against you. Charger kind of gives you the ability to move in quickly, as well as doing a little bit more damage to your bonus roll if you've charged 10 feet or more before actually making the attack, and it's got to be in a straight line. You can't zigzag or dodge. Keen Mind essentially is an intelligence score increase. You will always know which way is north, and that could be beneficial for a barbarian because you're probably out and about quite a bit. You will always know the number of hours left before the next sunrise or sunset, and you can accurately recall anything you have seen or heard within the past month. More useful for a spellcaster, like a wizard or a sorcerer, in my opinion, but I think this particular character could potentially benefit from this. Resilient, you've seen me use this before. It allows me to choose any ability score and increase it by 1 point to a maximum of 20. The Lucky Feat, this is pretty much why a lot of Dungeon Masters don't allow feats in their campaigns, is because of this particular feature. It gives you the ability to use 3 luck points throughout the course of the day. And because of that, it gives you essentially 3 ways or 3 times that you could undo a roll. And that roll can be against you or one of your rolls you made against a particular creature. A little bit overpowered in my opinion, but I don't necessarily dislike it. Mobile, again, makes you a bit faster. Kind of complements some of your other skills. When you use the dash action, difficult terrain doesn't cost you any extra movement, for example. When you make a melee attack against a particular creature, you don't provoke attack of opportunities from that creature for the rest of the turn, whether or not you hit. So you could essentially, if you've got a combat field that is littered with rubble, technically that is classified as difficult terrain. When you use this dash action, you can speed through that terrain and not cost you any disadvantage. However, if you don't dash, that terrain is still classified as difficult terrain. When you're making that melee attack against a particular creature, if you sort of dash in, make your attack, and then spin out, they can't return an attack against you as an attack of opportunity. So it's quite useful. And then there's durable, which would increase your constitution ability by 1 point, so it would take it to a 19, for example. And when you roll hit die to regain hit points, the minimum number of hit points you regain from the roll equals twice your Constitution modifier for a minimum of 2. So right now it is 4. That's twice of your Constitution modifier would be a minimum of 8 hit points that you would acquire on top of your actual hit dice roll. Actually, let me rephrase that. It is a minimum of 8 hit points. So you would gain at most 10 hit points, but at minimum 8 hit points. That's actually a significant ability. That allows you to literally stick around longer without having to do a long rest. So, with that in mind, let's see here. I'm going to go with alert. All right, so I'm going to minimize all of that, and I'm going to drop alert into here. Now, you may have noticed that this has gone through and received a +5 bonus increase. That is correct, because our dexterity is only giving us a +1. So our dexterity is giving us our 1 bonus. Alert is now giving us the ability to make use of our +5 bonus. And the rest of these things here are literally just role-playing. So there's nothing else you need to do. And that completes level 12. So level 13, we're going to see our proficiency bonus increase and our brutal critical die increases. So let's drop that into place. Go down to actions. Scroll up to the top of the page, click on this magnifying glass again, and change this extra critical die from a 1 to a 2. Now, when you go through and execute a critical attack, or have received a critical attack, I mean, in the sense of that you have hit something with a critical hit die roll, you will now roll 2 additional critical die on top of your 1 critical die that you would already roll. And that completes level 13. Level 14 is going to see our last path feature, and that is pretty much it. So let's drop this into place and open up Totemic Attunement. Hopefully I've said that right. I'm going to expand this out, and then we'll review this. All right. With Totemic Attunement, once again, depending on the path you have chosen, or rather I should say the totem you have chosen, you will have a different effect. In relation to the bear, while you are raging, any creature within 5 feet of you that is hostile to you, has disadvantage on attack rolls against targets other than you, except if they're immune to being frightened, or they can't see or hear you. In relation to the path of the eagle, while raging, you have the ability to fly a total distance of your speed. So you could, in the case of this particular character, I could fly 35 feet. But here's the thing. You cannot remain in the air unless you are being held aloft by something else. So, 5 feet up gives you 30 feet of movement. 5 feet over, if you are still in the air, 30 feet over, if you are still in the air at the end of your movement round, you will drop to the ground. You'll only drop 5 feet, so you won't suffer any damage, but you will still drop to the ground. If you've moved up 10 feet, that gives you 25 feet of movement in the air. You can go 25 feet over. You will, if you're still in the air, you will drop that 10 feet, potentially suffering 1d6 of damage. And it goes up every 10 feet as you fly up. Now, granted, you can only go up 35 feet, which means you could really only theoretically suffer 3d6 of damage as the maximum in the case of this particular character. But if you combine mobile into this, that gives you 45 feet. So that's a 4d6 of damage that you could potentially suffer. Generally, where this becomes useful is if you're going up a ledge, or you're jumping over something, or you're trying to bypass some form of obstacle. You're not meant to remain in the air. But it's still a good thing. In relation to the Path of the Wolf, when you are raging, you can use a bonus action to knock a larger or smaller creature prone when you hit it with a melee weapon. So, let's go through and set this up. So I'm going to drop Totemic into there. I'm going to go to Groups, select this, and drop that into there. So with Totemic Attunement, there's really only two things here that we may be able to set up as an effect. And I'm not entirely certain on this one. So let's add an effect. And what you're going to do is this. Totemic Attune semicolon. Okay, grant dis attack. And you have to be raging, so it has a maximum of 1 round. Although a safer option might actually be this on next roll. Now that I think about that. And the reason why I'm saying that is as follows. Let's say you've got a troll that's in front of you that you are attacking. So it's within your sphere of influence. But it is attacking one of your party members. Well, that troll might be a bad example. I'm not sure if it's immune to fear or not. But if that troll can be frightened, you will be able to make use of Totemic Attunement and drop this effect on your party member so that that particular troll will grant or gain a disadvantage attack against that particular player. But it should only be there long enough for the duration of that attack, because if another troll who is not within 5 feet of you but is within 5 feet of that particular player or is lobbing boulders from a distance, they're not going to gain a disadvantage roll against that for attacks against that particular player. So the best way to do this is to set it up this way. Apply that to the player just before the troll that is within your sphere of influence attacks that player, and that will drop when they complete that roll, so that the next time they make an attack, you have to apply it again. Now, a little bit more manual labor involved, but I think it's the safer option here. That way it can't necessarily be abused. So this next one might work. So let's actually go through the process of setting up an effect here. So now I actually should modify this because this is for the bear. And set this up for Totemic Attunement. Of the wolf. All right. So what we're looking at here, and this is going to affect you and you alone, in relation to Totemic Attunement, the size of the wolf. Essentially what you want to do is set up an if condition here. And the if condition is a size of less than or equal to large. You could potentially knock it prone. So how does that actually work? Well, what you do in a combat situation is if you hit this particular succubus, so let's say I made an attack roll here. All right, I have now hit that succubus. That's my first attack. I can now choose as a bonus action to apply this effect to them. All right, and now I'm going to do my damage. Now, I'm not going to see any additional damage or anything like that here, but that creature is now prone. When I make another attack roll, it's going to do so with advantage. As we can see here, we had an advantage roll. And I've hit again, so I'm going to do some more damage. Now, this particular succubus is partially resisting the weapon that I have. It's a blunt Morningstar. It's also non-magical. I think they have resistances against something in relation to that. But in any event, I can now show that this particular effect is in fact working. Excellent. And that actually is about all we can do in relation to totemic attunement. There's nothing else here that we can do for the eagle path here, because this is pretty much a movement ability as opposed to any form of effect. So all you'll want to do is make sure that if the DM asks, you just say, oops, hang on, let's go here. Make use of it, and then just drag and drop that into there. And that completes the setup of level 14. So level 15, we are going to acquire Persistent Rage as a new feature. So let's drop this into place. Go to our ability scores and our abilities, open up Persistent Rage. So with Persistent Rage, there really isn't anything that we need to do. I am going to link this on our Actions tab because the DM will periodically, most likely, ask for reference here. And the reason why I say that is that with Persistent Rage, you will only lose rage now if you've fallen unconscious or you choose to end it, or it has itself ended. So you've gone through 10 rounds or 1 minute of rage, it will end. The reason why this is such a good thing is because if you look at the description for rage, it ends early if you are knocked unconscious, or, and this is the part that this persistent rage applies to, or if your turn ends and you have neither attacked a hostile creature since your last turn or taken damage since then. So rage used to drop if it took too long for you to get into combat, or if you hadn't received any damage from any particular creature for a certain period of time. That no longer applies. You will now remain in rage for its duration until you choose to drop it, or you have been knocked unconscious. So the reason we've linked this into our Actions tab is, again, literally just to allow us to be able to say I'm using Persistent Rage and drop it into there. Now, technically, Persistent Rage is a passive ability, so you don't necessarily use it, but it does give you the ability to essentially quick link this into the chat page for the DM to use for reference. And that completes level 15. So level 16, we are going to see our second last ability score improvement. We've already received our proficiency bonus, but we are receiving our final rage damage bonus. So let's drop this into place. Go to the Actions tab and modify rage. So I didn't need to do that. Anyway, expand that out, edit this, change that 3 to a 4. And that completes the rage damage increase. So what about the ability score improvement? Well, I'm not exactly getting maximum benefit here. So what I'm going to do is increase 2 of my abilities by 1 point. Now I have a +5 bonus to my strength and a +4 bonus to my constitution. So that part hasn't changed. And that is all we have to do for level 16. At level 17, we are going to see our increase for our final proficiency bonus point, our second to last adjustment for our rage counts, and no additional changes there. And we are seeing our final brutal critical die being applied. So let's drop it into place. And let's see, let's modify our rage element first. So I'll set that to 6. So that's now 6 uses between long rests. And our brutal critical die is here at the top. We just want to modify that and increase that to a 3. Now there is one last thing that I want to check. We now have the ability to potentially roll a 30 when it comes to our final rage, Relentless Rage skill here. So I'm going to want to add 30 to this. Now, granted, chances are you're not going to hit 30, but there is still the option to, or the potential to do so. And that sets up our final adjustment for Relentless Rage. That also completes everything that we need to do for level 17. At level 18, we're going to see the Indomitable Might feature get applied to our character. So let's drop this into place. The abilities for Indomitable Might, open that up. There's nothing we really have to do here. Essentially what this is saying is that if your total strength check is less than what your actual strength is, in this case it's a 20, you can choose to use this score in place. So if I do a strength roll, and I rolled a 19, but I really needed a 20 to succeed, I can choose to take the 20. And that's literally it. There's nothing else you have to worry about. In fact, that completes everything that we have to do for level 18. Level 19, we will see our final ability score improvement. So I'm going to drop this into place. And I'm going to take advantage of this and go 20 and bring my wisdom up 1 so that I can reduce the wisdom penalty there. Just a little bit. And that completes the setup for level 19. Level 20 is going to see our final level applied. We will also make our final adjustment to our rage counter, and we will see our final feature get dropped onto our character. I'm going to drop this into place and modify the rage thing first. Up until now, we have essentially had a limitation as to how many times we could use rage, and that was a maximum of 6, and it's steadily increased over the course of our leveling. At this point in time, we no longer have to worry about that. We can now use rage an unlimited number of times before we take a long rest, and in fact, because we can now use it an unlimited number of times, you really don't need to take a rest. So that is all the change that we have to do there. Now, our ability score for Primal Champion. This is essentially going to increase both our strength and our constitution scores to a total of 24 because it's increasing it by 4. We've already maxed out our strength and our constitution check. So we get to go above that. And this is one of the few times where I have seen an ability score that is legitimately allowed to go above 20 and remain that. With that, we also don't need to worry about our constitution bonus exceeding what we have set up for our Relentless Rage here. However, if you were to get a ring, for instance, that modified our constitution above level 24 again, so let's say it took it up to 26, maybe 28, we will see a +2 bonus applied to this, which means we would have a +15 total. I think it's 28 that would do that. That means we could theoretically have the ability to make a DC 35 save. And we would, at that point, want to go through the process of adding a DC 35 check to this thing. Right now, we can't get there, but we're literally just 2 bonus points away from being able to do it. With that, we have now completed leveling up this character to level 20, and I hope you found this information useful and enjoyed the video. And if you did, I will hopefully see you in the next video. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.